Thank you, Liz. Good evening again. Welcome to the Board of Trustees meeting July 16th, 2019. I'd like to take a motion to open the public meeting. Trustee Nell, second. Deputy Mayor Cassell, all in favor. Please join me for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Prayer by Deputy Mayor Cassell.
Yes. 50 years ago today, Apollo 11 was launched for its rendezvous with the moon. 4 days later, Michael Collins orbited the moon in the command nodule, while below, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first men to set foot on the lunar surface. So tonight, I want to remember those brave American heroes and all those men and women of the space program who are responsible for this great leap for mankind. Thank you. Giant leap for mankind, to be more correct.
Thank you, Deputy. Okay. We're going to have a special night for us. That was a fun night. We welcome two police officers to the force. So I'd like to take a motion to appoint Dylan Luzon as police officer at an annual salary of $50,000, effective July 17th, 2019. And I'm going to administer the oath of office. I'm going to say a few words. Dylan, you want to
You want to take the motion? Mayor, you want to take the motion?
take a motion?
I move.
Trustee Nell, second. Trustee Taylor, all in favor? Do you solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, to carry out the duties of police officer of the Dobbsbury Police Department to the best of your ability? Yes, sir. Congratulations. That's great. Welcome aboard. I know you have your family. Raised in Dobbsbury, 29 years old, just graduated from Dobbsbury High School. Member of the United States Army for 3 years, with an honorable discharge. So, would you like to say a few words?
I'd like to thank my family for being here and supporting through all these years. I'd like to thank my family for support through all these years and getting me this great accomplishment. Thank you to the Dobbsbury Police Department for welcoming us, of course. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's the best honor of my life so far. Thank you very much.
High school grasshopper, his mom and Lisa, who was a trustee, Lisa, and Mr. Romano, grandfather. We had a big birthday party for Mr. Romano on July 4th. Last year, 90 years old.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick picture. Chief, did you want to
Present with the shield?
put the shield on?
Yeah, be his mother.
You want your mom? Lisa, you want to do that?
Absolutely. And Grandpa's gonna.
Good. Mr. Romano, back. Right. We're going to take a picture with the
Okay, Rob.
I usually announce that I was on the board of superintendent.
But that is true.
I was on
Is
the
that
board
right?
of-
Wow. Okay.
He told me how many years, but
Okay, so I'd like to consider a motion to appoint Andres De Jesus as police officer at an annual salary of $50,000, effective July 17th, 2019, contingent upon Mr. De Jesus successfully completing all standardized screening requirements as determined by the Westchester County Department of Human Services. You want to come up, Andres? Andres, you're born and raised in Oxford. And
You get to the motion.
Do the motion. Make the motion. Trustee Taylor, second. Deputy Mayor Purcell, all in favor? So what do you deal with? Do you solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and to carry out the duties of police officer of Dobbs Ferry Police Department to the best of your ability? So you, with the corrections department, Westchester,
County Department of Corrections the last 2.5 years.
and you went to Ossining High School,
Housing High School graduate.
33 years. And we'll bring your family up, you want to introduce your family?
I just want to thank the department, chief, the board, and the mayor for this opportunity and this campaign to serve the community. My family here, my father, my brother, my sister-in-law, and my girlfriend.
Everybody went, and,
My brother.
your brother? Okay. Nice to see the whole team here too. Tonight.
I forgot how to remake it for you.
Description. Okay. Somebody's more. Good girl. Good girl.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Guess you let them leave.
yeah. I don't know if you want to wait for the end of the meeting, but
You guys can go.
No. Yeah, congratulations.
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 Can you see that? Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Dylan, I forgot to mention, Dylan's also a member of the Dobbs Ferry Volunteer Fire Department.
Yes.
Thank you for your service. Okay. Do I need a motion to open up the continuation of the public hearing to receive comments?
No, it's already open.
It's
You
already
just
open,
adjourned
okay.
it, Yep.
So do we have any further comments? I guess we want to enter into the record the planning board comments and the Affordable Housing Task Force comments.
Right. The planning board comments are dated July 11th, and they're comments after the planning board meeting from last Thursday. And the task force comments, help me out here, Donna. I've got so much paper in here. Those were transmitted to me by email, so I'm not sure what the date is. Do you have that? No. Is there anyone in the,
The letter from the Westchester County is dated June 24th.
yep, that was entered last month. This one is the comments from your task force here in Dobbs Ferry.
Right.
Yeah. So those are the three pieces we needed in order to declare the record complete, unless you have any individuals this evening who'd like to speak to the issues.
Okay. Any other comments? Anyone? No?
There you go.
Steve, just state your name and...
Steve Tilley, 22 Elm Street. I would just like to add, for future consideration, a blast from the past, which is the low-carbon way of adding affordable units is to create an accessory apartment piece of legislation. And so I would hope that would come up for consideration in the future. That's something that we've looked at, we recommended years ago. There was some resistance, which I think, I have a sense that there's general support. There's legislation in adjoining villages that manages that process so it doesn't spiral out of control. And it also creates units with a minimum of input and environmental impact.
Yeah, the Affordable Housing Task Force is already looking into that.
Good, thank you.
Patty?
Patty Steinschneider, 329 Broadway. I went to second Steve Tilley's comments. I think it's exactly the most important thing that we could do. I know Rob worked very hard on, Rob Layton, Rob Barron, but Rob Barron would have been there. Worked very hard on it back when we were working on the land use. And we had a whole section that was prepared for that, which I think was actually quite good. And I think it's something that hopefully we can get back to. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Patty. Anyone else? No? Okay.
Laura Lee, do you want to point out any changes?
That'll be during the deliberations. You can close the public hearing at this point, and then
Okay.
you'll see later,
Okay.
after your presentations,
Okay.
there's a period of deliberation, so we can talk about
So
the
it's-
comments and how it fits. Sure.
So we'll take a motion to close the public hearing. Trustee Nell, second. Deputy Mayor Cassell, all in favor? Okay. So we have a brief presentation from Police Chief Rick Guevara, and he's going to talk about some of the things that are ongoing in the police department, in addition to appointing 2 new officers.
How's everybody doing tonight? How's everybody doing? I just again wanted to reiterate, thank you for the permission to hire 2 new officers. It's always an exciting time. I do appreciate your help. Liz, if you're paying attention, thank you also. You helped out quite a bit with the civil service end, and I do thank you on that as well. So just quick synopsis of where the police department is for 2019. Allow me this indulgence. We're still at an authorized strength of 27 police officers. The 2 new ones are due to retirements that we've had, and they are scheduled to begin the Westchester County Police Academy starting next Monday. 6,127 calls for service. Tracking back for all of 2018, the department handled 11,779 calls for service. Those calls range from simple vehicle lockouts to criminal complaints, domestics, medical aids, burglar alarms, any type of contact we have that generates water. That's how we document who we're speaking to and that one. So we're trending on the same pace as last year at this point. We have made 157 arrests for the year. Of them, as of today, 8 were juvenile arrests, so that doesn't count as part of the overall numbers. For 2018, we had made 373 arrests. 10 of those were juvenile arrests. The new, if you're not familiar, New York State passed the raise the age, which kind of created a new statute called the adolescent offender. So we're, instead of going to criminal courts, depending on the crime, they're being diverted to a youth section. So hasn't really changed a lot as far as the numbers are concerned. Just a few extra. We'll see what October of this year, because that age is going to go from 16 to 17 on the raise the age. So I'll have a better picture of how that affects the village's criminal caseload at the end of the year, and really into next year. But of real big things that we've handled department-wise, our biggest thing was our reaccreditation that occurred back in March by the Department of Criminal Justice Services. That was, again, a 5-year process. And so effective going forward, 5 more years, we will be re-examined by DCJS to make sure we've maintained our policy and procedure. Again, that's 110 standards that New York State breaks up between administrative, organization, operations, and training. And we have to make sure we at least meet those guidelines that they set forth. So what does that really mean, accreditation? Ultimately, outside of for liability purposes, it's wonderful for the village. It also, it's just an overall better sense of our overall professionalism. New York State, there's a little over 500 police departments that actually exist in New York State, and of them, as it's been dated, only about 150 of those police departments are accredited. So it is a very difficult grind, if you will, to ensure that we're maintaining those standards, and we review them on a quarterly basis to ensure that they is in order with that. So that was a big deal. In addition, for myself, I got trained with DCGS to become an assessor in the program. I took my own time last week. I went to Madison County, New York, and I actually oversaw their first accreditation, just to make myself more well-rounded so I can understand it within the agency. So it was just something that really I found to be eye-opening, because 500 police departments, we have one standard. How we get there from job to job changes, and so it was very interesting to see. I really enjoyed it, so that's something that I'm bringing back to Dobbs Ferry. The other big thing, again, has been our continued push with the working with the Traffic Safety Committee. We have the traffic unit that has been out there. One of the big things that I've heard over and over again here in the village is, concerns from the residents about, pedestrian safety, speeding, crosswalks. That is something that I understand, and that's part of trying to make this village a village. That walkability, being able to ride a bike, being able to enjoy everything that we have here. So with the traffic unit that we have, and that's 2 officers. They work Monday through Friday, daily meetings. We really try to specifically target during the early morning commute, the afternoon commute, and anything in between. They have done a tremendous job. Thank you to Deputy Mayor Cassell, a lot of support, and she's a liaison to the traffic unit and traffic safety committee, and really trying to take what is being broadcast through the board and then working through us as that medium to try to make the village a lot safer. So whether I was looking at the accident reports this seatbelt, believe it or not, people still not wearing seatbelts. So we're out there taking care of that. We're also enforcing to get the speed zones again for the front of the high school. We have a speed zone. So again, big push for both the board members and Charlene and the school district, Brady, PTSA, station, everybody. It was a true collaborative effort. That's really what this job is about. It's not really, it's all of us. We're all working together. And I think that was really a nice kind of accomplishment that everyone achieved here. So my plan is through August, we will be back out there again about 2 weeks before school begins, reminding the drivers that school is coming. Be conscious of everyone walking. We will be in other areas too, but you know, that's the other big thing that I'm seeing for us this year. Again, working with technology, you know, we do have to upgrade our live scan fingerprint machine. It's using technology again to help detect criminality and try to prevent that. So again, that's really what I have for you as far as a first synopsis. Do you have anything else for me? Or?
Great. Thanks, Chief. Bob?
Sure.
Yeah, you have to come up to the, just use the mic, Bob.
So you are-
Pick up the microphone, please, speak into it.
We live in Florida 4 months of the year. We have a crime watch committee down here. We're all fingerprinted every 2 months, or 2 years rather. We have police, or a sheriff's deputy come to a meeting once a month, goes over all the crimes in the area, what types of crimes we have in the area, meets and greets the people, just bringing it out, putting it out there for you. It's once a month deal. Oh, this guy is a monster. The guy that we're assigned to us, he's 6'8", 318 pounds, and he doesn't have an ounce of fat on him. So everybody says, that's it. His name is James Dean. Wow. But it's just throwing it out there. All right. Thank you, Bob. Chief, thank you. I think it's great that we're using technology to improve our.
Also, we do low tech as well. We just did the cops with phones earlier this
Yeah, where's our ice cream?
More importantly, where's our water slide?
Did they finish it?
Yeah, they finished it.
For those that aren't aware, there was an event at the waterfront this afternoon at 5 o'clock.
And I believe we're trying to work with Starbucks at the end of the summer to do a coffee with the cop again. They've been fantastic to us as well. Big supporters.
Right, great.
I did have one follow-up question, if I could, Chief. And that is, one of the things a lot of people had concerns about was whether or not Rivertown Square was going to put an undue burden and lead to a whole lot more incidents. It appears, based on the overall numbers, that it's something that you've been able to manage very well. But maybe you could comment on that, because it was a concern that a lot of people have had.
It's a good question. I think that anytime anything is added, regardless of municipality, whether it's more people, whether it's more business, it is going to generate additional calls. I wouldn't say that I have any, there's not like a crime spike that I can say that specifically, oh, this is an issue at this location or that. We did make a very big presence as that was opening, myself included, when I was on patrol. Because I was anticipating, I think some people, whether they knew that it was in Dobbs Ferry, I wanted to make sure that they knew it is in Dobbs Ferry. So while we do have calls for service there, I'm not saying, I'm not going to say that it's, there's been a major spike at this point. And there's still some more stores that are left to be open, and I'd like to see how that trends once it's at full occupancy. And then, then we'll be able to come back and see where we stand with our members.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Chief. Any other questions for the chief? Chief, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And thank the troops. Doing a great job.
For the hiring. I know that, I know there's a movie night too, so I want people to participate. But, I'm very excited with the way the police department, you know, we've got a lot of new hires, there's a lot of new faces, and officers are out there, they're out talking to our community. They like working, it's just a very exciting time, and I'm blessed that again, it's been 2 years, and I'm still very thankful and humble that I was given this opportunity to represent all of you. And just looking at we're going where we want to go, and it truly is a good time. So thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Great. And now we have a presentation from Sonia Tarjanian on the Historic Task Force. You're the chair of the task force, right, Sonia?
Hi, me again.
How are you, son?
Sonia Turjanian, 42 Belden Avenue, and I'm the chair of the Historic District Task Force. And tonight, I just wanted to give you an update on what we have been doing since January. We've been working very hard to complete an application for the designation of a new historic district in Dobbs Ferry. And this is a district that we're calling the Old Croton Aqueduct Historic District in downtown Dobbs Ferry. And it's about 150 properties running from approximately Cedar Street to Hatch Terrace, Main Street to Broadway. And as you can see from the brownish stripe going through the middle of it, the Old Croton Aqueduct Trail is the spine of our proposed historic district. We thought it was important to organize it around the trail because it's something that makes Dobbs Ferry very special. That in our village, the aqueduct runs parallel to Main Street for a huge chunk of our downtown. And the experience of walking through Dobbs Ferry is incredibly special because of all of the historic homes and farms and commercial buildings that you're exposed to along the way. And it's the scale and spacing of those buildings that also allows you to see the Hudson River and have these amazing views. So because of all this, I think the aqueduct is definitely a conduit, but I think of it as a conduit of people to Dobbs Ferry, visitors, shoppers, diners, tourists, and I think this is something we can really promote. I think there are a lot of other efforts going on right now that are promoting more walking and biking in Dobbs Ferry and in all of the river towns. And as this is happening, we want to make sure we preserve that really special experience on the aqueduct. So that's the basic idea behind this district. Like I said, it's about 150 properties. You've heard me talk before about the benefits of historic districts, but I'm just going to real quickly run through them for people who might not have heard these. For me, number one actually is meeting our climate change goals. This has been a big aha for me in the past couple of years learning about this. There are huge environmental costs to demolishing old buildings and trucking in newly manufactured materials to build new buildings in their place. There's a lot of life left in some of these buildings, and we've sort of been proceeding on the assumption that you're just automatically going to tear things down when you build a new building. And we want to shift our focus to more of an adaptive reuse, rehabilitation kind of approach to development in Dobbs Ferry. Affordability, this is also huge, and there's a lot of people, I know you're talking about it tonight, trying to keep Dobbs Ferry affordable, prevent these huge spikes in housing costs. And rehabilitating old buildings has a much lower cost than demolishing a building and putting up something brand new. And quite often, what you're avoiding there is having a developer come in who's beholden to, banks and other investment partners. And so In those cases, they have to get a huge return on their investment, and the things that they build tend to be not as affordable, and they sort of include the bare minimum of affordable housing in their plans. And even if we change the rules, they're still going to continue to do the bare minimum. So it's been shown in many communities in the United States that rehabilitation and reuse is a great way to maintain affordability and keep people in their neighborhoods and where they grew up. Walkability, there's been a lot of research on walk scores that are much higher in communities that have historic preservation and have a mix of older, smaller buildings. Tax benefits. If a historic district is recognized as historic by the National Park Service, income-producing properties are eligible for a 20% tax credit on rehabilitation costs. So that becomes a huge incentive for people to invest in their buildings, invest in rehabilitating them, making them look nicer, making them more energy efficient. All of that feeds back into these other benefits. Heritage tourism, we know that tourists who are interested in historic sites and areas of historic preservation tend to stay longer and spend more money. Property values do go up more consistently in historic districts than in areas that are not designated historic. But they don't go up in dramatic spikes the way they do with rapid gentrification. They go up gradually, but they do maintain value and it grows gradually. And finally, all of this feeds into downtown revitalization, which is something that everybody's talking about these days. There's a lot of different groups working on downtown revitalization from different angles. I think it's a really exciting moment. This is the time to make these changes and really just let's go with this energy that we've got right now. I'm not going to go through, you have this in your packets, but our task force has been doing a lot of community outreach to make sure that this doesn't take anybody by surprise. This is a pretty large district. We want everybody to know about it. We've been talking to everybody who will listen, giving a lot of presentations, having a lot of public information meetings. We've had our volunteers go door to door with flyers in the district. So anyway, people know about it. We're hoping more people will see this tonight maybe. Hello. So yeah. So to apply for a historic district designation in Dobbs Ferry, we have to submit a form for the overall district that justifies the boundaries and what the story is of the district. But then we have to do these individual property forms for each building in the district. And these forms are very valuable because they force you to really document everything about that building. Old photographs, maps, deeds, any kind of information that we can find on the building, and write a description of it, figure out the statement of significance. There's a lot of work that goes into deciding what is it that we value about each building. It also includes an evaluation form. This is a non-binding evaluation that you can use to score buildings to decide whether they should be considered contributing or non-contributing buildings. And what does that mean? Contributing buildings are buildings that we have decided are important to the historic district. So there's a lot of factors that go into deciding that, but certainly age is one of them. It's not the only one. Architecture, style, condition, things like that. Non-contributing buildings are not subject to the same regulations as contributing buildings, even if they're within the boundaries. So an example of that would be something that's completely incompatible with the historic district, doesn't fit in, doesn't contribute. Usually it's newer buildings, but there are other factors. There are also brand new buildings that can be deemed contributing because they are compatible and they fit in and they are important to the district. So it was kind of cumbersome to fill out all of those paper forms for this district because it's just a lot of paper. And we wanted everybody to be able to collaborate on this application at the same time. So what we did was we created this database in Google Drive where we have all of the buildings in the district or in this database. And then we have all of the questions that are on the form. And so this is a way of compiling all the information in one place. So, we have the parcel number, we have the address, we have the year built, we have a description, statement of significance, and we have the names of the owners and their addresses so that we can send them a certified letter when it's time to submit the application. So as you can see, we're making a lot of progress on filling this out. I have an amazing group of volunteers working on this round the clock. I mean, they have just been killing themselves trying to compile all of this information for each property, and I think it's a real sign of the enthusiasm that there is for this idea. We've also created folders for all of the properties, and inside these folders we're compiling everything that we can, photographs, views from the aqueduct. We always want to have a picture with a view from the aqueduct. So like this is the folder for the Celtic corner, that's how it looks from the aqueduct. You know, how it looks from the street. Historic photographs, there's the Celtic corner there. There's another historic photo of the Celtic corner and Sushiniji. So this stuff is really going to be important when it comes time to look at applications and decide, you know, what do we want to do with this building? Is it possible to rehabilitate it and bring it back to its former glory? All of this documentation is going to help us with that. And then the third part of our Google Drive is the evaluation form, which we put into digital form. We created a rubric for deciding whether a building should be contributing or non-contributing. And so what we have here is all of the criteria. They have different weights, and we go through and we score it on all the different factors, like, you know, supportive elements, event, patterns, continuity, setting, and then it spits out a score. The post office has a score of 198 points. That qualifies it as a contributing building. So this is an area where there's going to be some give and take, because it's not a science. We have to decide what's important to us, what is going to be important to the district, and it's something that the AHRB is going to have to spend some time kind of looking at. I know, it's going to be a lot of work. So set some time aside, you know, clear your calendars for September. This is going to be a heavy, heavy lift. So that's our application. That's what it's going to look like. This is the timeline. We just put these time limits into place recently, remember, so that this wouldn't take 10 years. So basically, the building department will refer the application to the HRB, and they will have 60 days to schedule a hearing. And then we'll have a public hearing. It has to close within 60 days. Then they have 90 days to send their recommendation to you. And then you have 60 more days to schedule a hearing. Then you have a hearing and you vote on the district. So, you know, if we use all of that time, basically the decision will be made around August of 2020. So just under a year from now. So what I'm here to ask for tonight is that we talk about a moratorium on demolition while our application is pending. This is a commonly accepted practice for communities that are considering big changes to zoning, such as designating a historic district. And I included in your packets guidelines from the New York State on how to go about doing this. So you can look over those. The Preservation League of New York is on board to help us with this. They have offered all of their support. One of them was going to be here with me tonight, but she had a preservation emergency in New York. So she couldn't be here, but they have offered to come and give a presentation if that would be helpful, or to just be on call to answer questions. They've written this legislation for dozens of communities in New York, and they know all the case law, they know how it's done, and we want to do it right. But the idea here is basically we don't want to make any irreversible mistakes as projects are being quickly pushed through before designation goes into place. So, you know, for properties that are not designated historic, there's nothing standing in the way of an owner tearing it down, really. As long as they have an accepted application for a new building, they can tear down an old building. The new legislation shifts the focus to asking questions about the possibility of adaptive reuse and rehabilitation. The new legislation would require somebody to present expert testimony on whether adaptive reuse is a possibility. So it creates more space for us to have that conversation about whether just automatically tearing everything down is really the best approach, or should we look at keeping these old buildings and integrating them into the new development that's happening. This is not about stopping development. This is about creating a space where we can find a sensitive middle ground stopping all development and just throwing everything in landfill. So, my request is for a year-long moratorium on demolition. I think it could be a great opportunity to do other things that are in the air right now, like maybe the new vision plan for downtown. You know, you'd have a year to do that without worrying about having anything torn down. Or if the new affordability legislation would also be happening at the same time. So anyway, that's my request, and thank you very much.
Sonia, thank you. Thank you for all the work you've done and your team has done. It's, I know it's a lot, and it's very helpful.
Yeah, it's
Sonia, could you just ask one, could you give me an example of other downtowns that are historic in
Irvington,
okay, anything else besides Irvington?
Cold Spring,
Austining.
Yonkers, Austining, Hudson, Steve?
I think that's enough.
It's quite a bit.
Yeah.
They're all nice towns, too.
Okay,
They're all over the place.
and they're all historic downtowns?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Irvington, Connie Kehoe has offered also to come and talk about how great it's been in Irvington. You know, they've had it for a couple of years now, no problems.
Okay, good to know.
Where
So-
are we on the guidelines?
They're being worked on by Steve Tilley's office, and I can't really speak for him, but
But he's here.
here.
I think that's important, because as I told Sonia before, I think it's, hard when we had Belden in front of us so long ago and the guidelines approved so long ago to really be delving into a new district without guidelines.
I agree.
I know, I've told Steve this as well, it's not a secret.
Called before the judge. The text is, as I explained to Charlene, the text is done, and I'm trying to have all the illustrations of even of details be dot survey. And so that's what I'm doing right now. You see me wandering around with several cameras, taking details, because we don't know where exactly the boundaries of where these guidelines might apply. I've been up on Clinton, I've been on Cochrane, so I'm trying to anticipate in the illustrations any potential area that might, in the future, someone might be thinking about as a historic district, so that there are salient examples of the kinds of things I'm talking about in detail, where I'm talking about roofs, porches, siding, how to manage doors and windows, all this stuff is in there, and it needs to be illustrated. So I've got the text, and I'm now putting the images in a folder, and the graphic artist has just begun to start to assemble it. So I'm expecting that within a short period of time, we should be able to have a draft to submit, and then obviously that draft is going to go through iterations, because it's
Right, that's why you want
it's
to.
now going to be community property once I put it out there.
So is the text final then, like we could see the text without the pictures?
Well, I'd rather not, I'd really rather put the whole thing together, because I think it's going to be much more understandable and engaging with a draft with images to make the point, because the images will also have captions that intensify the description. You know what I mean? There's text, and then there's an image, but the image has a caption that kind of says, really nails what the point is of that,
Okay.
the rest of the text. So
I'm gonna be kind of bullish about this and say, what does short order mean? Like, is that a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months?
this fall, we'll be ready. I
So,
mean, I'll have
so
a
2
draft,
months?
but,
So 2 months?
Yeah.
Yep.
I kind of want to put the fire to you, because I feel like we're not going to get it. I know you have a lot of things going on, but it's becoming more important, and I want, Belden's been approved, and there's already projects going to the AHRB,
I
so.
would love to have this done. I want to do it right, and it's really a major would say that I'll be back here in September, late September, early October with a draft. And it's possible that it will be sooner. I would like it to be sooner, but I don't want to create expectations.
It'd
I mean,
just be good
this-
to keep the, like, knowing the timeline of that and coordinating with the timeline of this, and trying to have this as much prior to this as
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
for all the boards, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, and partly the work that's been going on,
You're part of both,
I'm a
too, right?
consultant to the committee, so I've been monitoring that work and, in that Google Drive, and harvesting images from that, which have been taken by Greg Thomas and other, great local photographers. So as that's been developing, that's part of what's going into the, the collective enterprise, but.
Great.
That document is going to be something that this board and other village boards are going to have to be very involved with. So the sooner we can get it, the sooner the rest of this could move forward,
Yes, yes.
possibly move forward.
Right. So, we're going down a long and winding road, and this may be just a little premature. I mean, although I like the charm of the historic river towns, I think we need to take a look at the existing historic Belden and any impact from that. And then we'll see when we get the manual from Steve. The manual from Steve, then we can move forward with it. A moratorium would be very difficult, I think, to even consider at this point.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what the concerns are with moratorium?
I think we'd be interfering with people's use of their property under the existing municipal code without a framework under which we intend to eventually implement some historic district.
So you're saying the lack of the guidelines is what's concerning you?
The lack of the guidelines leads, at least me, to not understand clearly what's being asked for here. And without that, I can't see taking as drastic an action as telling property owners that they can't do anything with their property, or that they're very limited to what they could do with their property under the existing code.
Because we'd only have a year.
Yeah, so there is, in the meantime, there is a placeholder in the code that says that people have to adhere to the Department of the Interior's historic guidelines. So that is there for the purpose of evaluating current applications. So anybody on Belden Avenue, for example, has to follow the Department of the Interior's guidelines. I understand, though, that we want to know exactly what our guidelines are going to be specifically in the downtown. This is a moratorium on demolition, not
Right.
development. So this is just trying to prevent buildings from being torn down in the proposed historic district while we're considering the application. And there's a lot of merit to that, I think, because you could see a rush to push things through in the meantime before the designation takes place, because once designation takes place, it is going to be much more difficult to tear down a building in our downtown.
Well, assuming we vote for it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I'm much concerned about the timing. I've done a number of moratoriums, and one has to have their ducks in order. One of the issues that we're dealing with now is a look-see at the vision plan. So that requires an RFP. And we don't have the guidelines, because the vision plan would have to look at the guidelines on a holistic basis, especially if we do downtown. It's been my experience that unless all these ducks are in a row, you don't go for the 1 year, because you're going to, at the end of the day, you will have a lawsuit on your hand because you're not prepared, or you will pass something that is somewhat ridiculous. And I've seen that happen too. So I think that this particular board takes a lot of time in looking at it and really researching it and really deciding on what they see would be good for the village. So that's my 2 cents. It's just too early right now. Our ducks are not there. They're
Yeah.
swimming here, but they're not here.
Would it be helpful to have someone from the Preservation League give a presentation, because they understand the concern about lawsuits, and they've dealt with that many times?
Unless they're doing the RFP and unless they're deciding the guidelines, yeah, I realize that too. It would be very interesting, and it's really up to the board, but it's not gonna tell us that we can do it in a year. I mean, that's my opinion.
So the RFP is for the vision plan, and the guidelines you're talking about are the historic district guidelines?
Those are the two issues I'm talking about, vision plan, look-see, and the guidelines. I think that it is, you have to take a holistic approach on these things, because then you get a mishmash, and certainly with all the work you've done, you don't want that.
Right. Well, I mean, they are kind of moving forward in parallel, which is good.
Well, yes, and that's a very good thing,
Yeah.
because they all can be looked at. It's not like, oh, well, maybe we have to do something there, but your work has really helped, will help the whole program.
Great. Anybody else?
I'd be open to hearing from the preservationist. I don't know how the rest of the board
That's
feels.
fine.
Yeah.
I said I would be interested in hearing from the preservationist, if I said that right.
The Preservation League, they have public policy people who do nothing about this, so they could definitely talk about the case law and precedent.
But in the meantime, if there is something in writing that you could forward to the board, that probably, if they have a document or a guideline, I saw what was in here,
Yeah.
which was, basic background under New York State law as opposed to an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
But it might be helpful if there's an explanation to circulate that and make it available to the public so that people could see, the arguments.
Yeah, sure.
And thank you guys for doing all of that work. I can't.
Tremendous amount of work.
Yeah, it's important work, so.
That's a lot. How many people do you have?
It varies, but, we have like 12 to 15 people
That's
working on it.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I couldn't do it without them. They've been tremendous, so.
Tell them thank
Great.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Okay, we'll open it up for courtesy of the floor. Would anybody like to address the board? Ed?
Ed Hennessy, Millwood Avenue, Belsory. And I'd like to talk about the Verizon wireless cell service in Belsory, or more precisely, the lack of it. I became aware of the fact that it was degrading over a period of time. And back in February, I contacted the Executive Vice President of Wireless Operations, and she's also executive of, company relations. Her name is Tammy Irwin, but I contacted her office and talked about the fact that on Main Street and Palisade Street, unless you're connected to some sort of Wi-Fi, if you're in a building, you have no Verizon service. If you have Wi-Fi, you can get calls, you can make calls. If you don't, it's dead. You can drive down Main Street, and I guarantee you're gonna drop a call just about every time you drive down Main Street. And I'm not the only person experiencing this. I was looking at, like I said, Main Street and Palisade Street mostly when I did the contact. But I've since had a conversation with the ex-deputy mayor, Vic Dolio, and found out that in Judson Avenue, up near Beachdale, and certain sections of Clinton Avenue, they also have no service.
Yeah, there are blackouts up there.
It's all blacked out. When I contacted the company and went through it, they talked about the fact that they took a cell site down back behind the old power test station. Most of you can remember that is now 2 Ashford Avenue. It has been there for a while, and it's a long story behind that. The cell service didn't degrade when they took down that cell site. It happened almost coincident with the fire that happened at 381 Broadway. When they lost the power, and they took that cell site out, which was on the roof, I believe NYNEX or then Verizon had part of the service out of that site. And since then, they've lost it. What disturbs me is the fact that they have no plans to improve the service. There's no plan to build a cell site, no plan to future plans. And I don't have that in writing, but I did get a note from the young lady that called me back and emailed me that our technical support team has confirmed the area in question, which I made very plain, is a variable coverage area. And when I said, what does that mean? She goes, there's a lot of dark spots. I said, no service. She said, well, yes. I said, well, can you readjust other cell sites? Because you can do that to overlap each other so you get better service. There was no plan to do that. They didn't think it was capable of doing it because of the fact they lacked cell close to the town. And I asked about, the future plan. She said, well, we're going to bring it up before our committee to see what we can do in the future. I've contacted them since then. There's no plan, and there's nothing. I'd like to know, is the village have anything that requires Verizon to come to you for approval to provide service here or to do business in town? Is there any licensing or anything they do?
Charlene?
Yes, there is an agreement that we have with Verizon. It is expired. We have been attempting to contact them to sit down and talk about it. Well, I got a note from our attorney who said that they finally answered and they are sending us a renewed lease, contract, I'm sorry. So we do have a contact. Are they responsive? And they're as responsive to us as they are to you. However, there is that leverage, and certainly that is something that the mayor has brought it up in a number of trustees, that coverage is horrible, and of course anybody who has stayed in Dobbs Ferry for any length of time knows it, and we will bring it up. The success aspect of it, maybe if we get like enough people, sort of hitting the drums and bothering them, maybe that's something that could move them.
I would encourage anybody who can
Yeah.
to complain about it.
Yeah,
And if anybody wants the email address of how to get in touch with the executive relations, I'd be happy to forward it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you send it to us?
Send it to us.
They did call me within a day or two of once I sent that email out. And they sound very attentive, but nothing happens. Just so you know. But, thank you for the time. And
Thank you for bringing that up,
Do you
Ed.
guys know if the 5G stuff is related to
Small
this?
cell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if they're built, they're
Which is
working on
coming.
the new technology, which is like the next layer. It's called 5G. And so if they're not going to be trying to improve the old technology because they want us to move to the new technology,
I believe the 5G really has to do with the internet and normal transport. It's not necessarily the wireless
wireless,
cell
really?
phone. It's connection between cells, it's connection to different parts, but
Oh,
I think it was saying.
dang, you know a lot.
I
don't know that.
Well,
You're not working for,
well, whether or not 5G
I know, you're with
solves the
AT&T,
problem,
aren't you?
it's not, there's no reason to expect that to be imminent. So
Yeah, true.
your points are well taken.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's gonna help our situation.
Ed, could you please share the email address so that the public can actually?
Everybody on the board.
great, Ed, thank you.
And I said to Charlene,
Okay,
Please.
thank you.
Anyone else want to address the board? Rob?
Maybe we can talk about cutting the extra wires too.
Yeah, yeah.
That'd be nice.
Rob Barron, I just wanted to say a couple things. One is, I just want to I know Chief Guevara left, but I just want to thank the chief, the police department in Dobbs, the village board, the mayor, deputy mayor, especially Mayor Cassell, who's been a strong advocate for traffic safety issues on the traffic committee. And as well as, like, as the chief said, it takes a whole community, the school district, GSA. A year and a half ago, I was standing here talking about how, 5 children have been struck by motorists in our village. It ended up being 6 for the school year. But this past year, a lot of it has to do with the enforcement. The police have done all the sort of, the full court press that we've done as a community. no children were hit this year.
Wow,
That
that's
is a
great.
huge difference, and is, I know, right, exactly. And it's actually a countervailing, it sort of goes against the trend that's happening in the United States, where pedestrians are being hit by motorists increasingly, and that number keeps going up. And there's a lot of reasons to discuss that, but not right now. The other thing is, I just want to say to Sonia and her team, I appreciate that. I noticed that some of the concerns that were raised in the Sustainability Task Force about the historic district were brought up. So thank you very much. I just want to make sure that whatever we end up doing, we not only look at the sort of preservation aspect, but also the fiscal aspect of the village, the number of units that we are able to add to our village, so people who don't live in our village can actually move here, and we can grow, and also affordable housing, that we create more affordable housing units. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. Bob?
I first moved here 46 years ago, every police officer in town, and every chief since Walker. Last board of trustee meeting, we had, the hotel wanted to make 5 additional units. We went to the planning board. Planning board, I think, sent it back to you again. What's the status on it?
We haven't gotten it back.
Yeah, I don't
yet.
think we've gotten it.
Haven't gotten it back. This development was supposed to be an upscale development. We can't even rent a supermarket anymore. If you got them 10 more or 5 more units, now every one is a single unit. Parsons trying to get rid of that whole hotel, Parsley Acres. I think that's what they're gonna try to do too. I really don't think this should happen. If it comes up again, I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna make sure I'm buried. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Anyone else? No? Okay. We have a proclamation for the 2019 Road to Freedom Walk, August 18th, 2019. I'll read it here, and it's from the board. And we'll also read it at the Historical Society at the end of the walk that day. So whereas the village of Dobbs Ferry commends all those persons retracing the steps of the Continental Army through the village of Dobbs Ferry on this day, therefore be it resolved that in recognition of the 238th anniversary of the march of the Continental Army from the village of Dobbs Ferry to the American victory at the Battle of Yorktown in Virginia, which led to the end of the Revolutionary War. The Board of Trustees of the Village of Dobbs Ferry declares Sunday, August 18th, 2019, as Road to Freedom Day in the Village of Dobbs Ferry. So I hope to see a lot of people out there that day on August 18th. I guess we'll open up a discussion for consideration of the resolution adopting the introductory local law with revisions that we talked about earlier.
Well, we need to take a look at the law in terms of the recommendations from your planning board and also county planning board and also the task force, which you tasked with the initial process of reviewing this law as it came forward. I did take some time this afternoon to do the revisions, which were necessarily corrections and clarifications alone. You know, your existing code, which was the basis of this local law, for example, said you had to have less, you had to have at least 80%, and it made it confusing when you looked at the model code. So we have, I have prepared a revised version of that. The most substantial portions of the comments, the first of which came from the task force, had to do with the options on what to do should a resident in an affordable unit have the great fortune of not qualifying anymore based upon an increase in income. So there are 3 options in the model code, and I wanted to point out that the task force has recommended option B, which means that the resident should simply pay the greater of the rent amount payable under the provisions of your ordinance, which they would no longer qualify for, or 30% of the resident's monthly adjusted household income. That was their recommendation. I had a quick interaction with Tracy Barron this afternoon, and she explained that she was concerned, and Deputy Mayor Cassell, you can chime in as well. The task force was concerned about having to evict, for want of a better word, it's a very strong word, a tenant who no longer qualifies for an affordable unit from an affordable unit should they have been there for a while, and they had the fortune of increasing their income. So she was concerned that you'd be displacing people who had become members of your community. So we need to look at how we want to handle this. I know that in my experience with the voucher program, you have to qualify yearly, and I know the county administers that same level of checking based upon the federal income tax returns. So you'd have to decide how you would like to handle in the event that, based upon empirical evidence, an occupant in an affordable unit no longer qualifies. So if you had any input, we could choose or amend or revise, and we should do that on the records to be sure that everybody's clear.
So the concern with that is that if they then did not qualify as needing affordable housing because they could afford it, they could kind of stay there in that place and take a spot that someone who does qualify for affordable housing could not get. Like, if they didn't leave, they would be there, they could afford more, and somebody who couldn't afford it couldn't be there. So that would be the concern with leaving it as recommended by the task force. But if you could limit that to give them a year of finding another place, or possibly having a year of good fortune and then getting back, and
Give them a grace period.
yeah.
Sure, providing the grace period, okay.
So that would be option C, is that correct? Where it says for 1 year? Would that be the,
But the resident should pay the greater of the rent, yeah, so it's not an instantaneous eviction, that you would provide the grace period and to have to go through a limitation on the extension of the existing lease.
That would make sense.
And then, should they requalify, as Trustee Nallis explained, should they requalify at the next qualification period, then you would have given them a grace period. I mean, we're hoping they don't requalify. Right. We're hoping they continue to trend in a positive direction, but that, unless
But it could
they.
be like a thin line where
Right.
like you just happen to go over the threshold, and then to try and find a new place would be a burden, and it could cause a bad spiral. I can see that.
Right.
If you were to keep going up and up and up, then you might have to leave your spot for somebody who needs it.
So would you agree to a grace period of an extension of the lease for no longer than a year? And then they'd have to.
Gives them some time.
Unless the tenant requalifies under the existing statute, that would make sense. That's
Okay.
kind of a compromise solution.
I
But
would agree
it prevents the, situation where somebody, is earning way above the threshold but stays in a subsidized unit.
Okay,
Well, it's no longer subsidized. They
Sorry.
then pay
They pay the full
They pay
amount.
the full
Well,
amount in
a
rent,
unit
but the
that would
unit
be
itself is no
subsidized,
longer.
right? It's not available for
Right.
somebody who needs it,
Exactly.
as Christie said, trustee.
Right,
said.
so there would be an increased amount of rent for that period, up to 30% of the income that they've declared, and then up to the next qualifying event, and should they qualify to stay, they'll stay. That will give them a year of grace to, if their good fortune continues.
To find another.
To find another location. The other option would be to try to find a non-restricted rental unit if it's available in that same development. That would be option A, and that's just another layer. But if you think that the extension of the year grace period up to the next qualification period is sufficient, then we can go with option C with the caveat unless they requalify. Okay?
I just want, clarification, so if they, is it the option where they can pay but go into an open, regular priced unit? Is that only in A?
Yes.
Can we combine them?
We can.
No,
combine.
well, it's not. I mean, anybody would be, if the
Right.
person is, if they get a job and now they're earning, $100,000 a year, they would be able to go into a market-based unit in the same building.
Right, if one's available.
If it's
If
available.
one's
If it
available.
becomes
If
available.
it's not available,
It's
whether or
not
not,
available.
whatever
Why
they
is
earn,
that, why would that
they
have
couldn't
to
get
be
there.
in here? Like, why
It doesn't need to be.
I don't think it
it
does.
needs to be, no.
A just had the fact that they would be able to complete their lease, their current lease term.
Oh, right, they wouldn't make them.
It
leave,
wouldn't
they
be
would
for a
give
full
them-
year. It would say that they're in the 9th month of a 12-month lease term, then the grace period would be much shorter. So that's the difference with A. If you'd like to keep it as C, because you always have the right to move into a non-restricted unit, of course.
Right.
But A requires them to move into a non-restricted unit if it's available.
Right,
Whereas
for
C
just-
doesn't, so that opens up an
Yeah.
affordable.
For just a few
apart-
months.
Or a longer time, but it opens up an affordable apartment for somebody who newly qualifies
Yeah.
or is on a wait list to get in immediately, whereas if you do C, it makes them wait a year.
Right.
So the question is really, do we want to leave, I don't know if there is a wait list, I don't know how it works. I mean, do we want to leave people on that wait list or use A? And then if there's nothing available, they can extend on theirs for not to exceed a year unless they requalify.
But would they have to then
That's the way
move and
to go.
move back?
Yeah, see, I like the idea of at least giving them a year to, the option of.
I'm just saying though, but it deprives another person who qualifies from getting an affordable unit. There's not that many.
But that's what I'm saying, that we could combine the two by making the instant moving to a regular unit.
But there may not be one
No,
available.
there's not.
The
But if it's
idea of
not-
allowing them to stay, again, is that it's people who
Right.
have children, the kids are in the school, they've got friends, they're
No,
part of the
it's
community.
keeping them in the same development, Don, in the same building.
Yeah, but that's only if, but not make them move into the same, because what if there isn't
If
an
it's not
apartment
available.
Then they can stay in their apartment for a
For
year.
a year.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're just saying combining the
Oh,
two.
right.
Yeah.
Sure, I can do that.
But no,
I'm not
if you
saying that's
combine
the way to
two,
do it.
then they would, so, they no longer qualify, they're immediately moved into a different unit.
If it's
If
available.
one's available.
If one's
No, it's,
available.
yeah, if they can
They have a
complete.
year to potentially go
Right.
If no
back,
such-
but then it's
Well,
full.
say
No,
the.
no, they
If no
complete
such
their-
dwelling unit shall be available at said time, the resident may be allowed to sign one additional one-year lease for affordable housing unit
Right.
they occupy, but shall be not offered a renewal of the lease beyond the expiration of the said
Right.
term.
It's
So
not-
you could also add to that, unless
they
requalify.
requalify.
Right, but the
Yeah.
first part isn't,
Yeah.
they're not getting kicked out of their apartment, they finished their lease term
Right.
in the apartment, so if
And-
they're 6 months in, they still get to stay there, but then they're offered a non-restricted unit if it's available. And if it's not available, then
You-
they're offered an extension for a year.
For a year. So
But
so
if
that
they-
grace
but this-
period could conceivably be,
Close to 2 years.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna
Closer to
say. It could be more, it could be a much longer
Could be.
time than C.
I think we should just talk it out, because it's a lot of different choices.
Are you opening a unit for somebody that is probably gonna wait list waiting for that apartment?
Well,
Totally
well, not
anticipated.
necessarily, because it, as Nicole points out, if it's in the first month of a lease, you could have 23 months
Right.
instead of 12.
Yeah, but they only review it every year, so you wouldn't even know it.
You wouldn't know until
You
the
wouldn't
end.
know
of it.
until the year is up.
I think it's probably easier and more fair to do C, and then if they requalify, they can, you know.
I agree with
C
that.
is the way to go.
Yes.
okay. C, unless they requalify. Got it. And the
C
only,
plus the requalifying.
and the only other area I suggest you look, actually, there's two. The expedited review process, which was something brought up by the planning board and Mr. Manley. The concern was that having expedited review based upon getting all of these individuals together in the same room for a pre-construction meeting. This is on page 11, expedited review process. It suggested that may actually elongate the process, just trying to maximize getting everybody in the same room at the same time. So I took a stab at changing the revisions to make it less mandatory, more what was available, and the coordination would be by and through the building department as the initial point of contact and review. In other words, pre-qualification meeting, come in, bring your materials, sit down with the building department first, and then you'll have a pre-application meeting, and it says as long an appropriate non-quorum number of members of the various may be present. So it made it less mandatory, more, getting as many people in the room as possible to assist to expedite the process.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. And the final one was, again, raised by the task force, and we had already revised this to some extent. This is on page 10, having to do with the alternatives to set aside upon an application by, for a waiver for some or all of the affordable units. The task force had suggested being sure that any decision on that application, should it move forward, be done following a public hearing. And I see no reason why a public hearing could be held for the purposes of hearing the evidence presented by the developer. And you can see the changes. I've made it clear in this paragraph that there's a burden on the applicant to prove the need for the requested waiver by clear and convincing evidence, including empirical financial data, that the inclusion of the affordable housing units required by this section would render the development financially infeasible. So we'd have to prove by a higher standard, by actual evidence in the record, that the number of units he's asking for, and then you'd have the ability, based upon that, to determine whether the applicant should purchase, construct, or affirmatively facilitate the construction of affordable housing elsewhere in the village, or require the applicant to deposit a per unit fee in lieu into a specific special account for affordable housing reasons, or to require of both A and B a combination. So this gives you a...
Or we could say no.
Yes, but in your sole discretion, you can say no without even scheduling the hearing.
Right, that's what.
Right.
Yeah, because one of the concerns was making sure that the intent of the law or the intent of the payment in lieu of section is that we want the developer to create the housing. We don't want to have to create the housing.
Okay.
If at all possible.
All right. So those were basically the areas, based upon the comments that came in, that just required your deliberation and attention. So if you would like to pass, take a motion to pass the resolution
With
to adopt this
adopting these changes?
as revised, to
Okay.
adopt introductory local law 1 as local law 2, because the fee chapter stepped over us. So as revised, then you can proceed to take
Okay.
that vote tonight.
I also want to mention that the task force will continue to work on this, to go through
Yes.
stuff, to see what works, what doesn't, if there's any issues, so.
And
I was going to say the same thing, that this brings us in compliance with the Westchester
Right.
Model Code, which
Right.
we needed to do, but that this is a work in progress.
Right.
As was mentioned earlier about auxiliary units and other factors, you guys are thinking about it.
Right.
And it's an ongoing process.
Right, exactly.
I did do some research this morning and sent it to the committee about some sample incentives provisions, which increases, if you can grant you can ask for a higher percentage as affordable units in exchange for giving something back to the developer. So I sent that list over, and that's just a way to begin some of the research necessary, that's all. So do you want to ask for a motion?
Okay, so we'll take a motion for a resolution adopting the revisions that we just discussed,
The local law as revised.
as revised.
Do we have to mention the thing about the new development, that some of the wording changes, we don't need to discuss that?
Nope, I
Okay.
made those changes, they were wholesale. I made the
Got it,
changes
okay.
that just were for clarification purposes, as requested by the planning board and also as requested by the task force. Those were wholesale, they're in this local law as revised.
Great, thanks. Motion? Deputy Mayor Cassell, second. Trustee Taylor, all in
Wait,
favor?
do you have a comment?
Ed, did you want to comment?
No, I was surprised.
Getting ready for this?
Okay.
I want to thank the task force, the amount of work that they did. They did a tremendous job, a lot of work. Laura Lee and Charlene, thank you. Ed, thank you. The planning board, and we've just begun.
Great. Thank you all. Consider a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a letter to Governor Cuomo in support of the hotel occupancy tax extension. Motion?
Do you want to explain what we're doing?
The letter.
Well, the letter, the hotel tax, which,
seem to do
with the
this every
benefit of about $100,000, I think, so far, which has been open about a year.
Yeah, it is an extension, the governor signed the extension of the law quite recently, and in order to effectuate it, we need the letter. I'm sorry, he did not sign it yet, it was passed, and in order to sign it, it's very usual that he requests a home rule letter stating that we are still in
Support.
of the law that gives us extra money.
Great.
Jeff, about what did this generate?
About 100,000.
Yeah, about 90 to 100,000.
So it's not an insignificant amount of money.
Yeah.
No, it is not.
That's less than a year.
I'll make your motion, Mayor.
Second? Deputy Mayor Cassell, all in favor? Okay, consider a motion to approve orders number 1 and number 2 for July 2019, as recommended by the village treasurer. Motion? Jeff, do you have any? Motion. Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee Rosillo, all in favor? Consider a motion to purchase the live scan fingerprint system from IDEMIA for an amount of $35,800.
I think we need to go over 5.
We skipped 5.
Oh, did I, miss? Oh, sorry. Consider a motion to award the bid for the Cedar Street sidewalk and stairway to ELQ Industries Incorporated for $248,404. Ed, did you want to say a few words about this?
Sorry, Ed. You need a little history refresh from that one.
I know.
Can I go down?
Whoop.
And there go the stairs.
And there's
What do you see there, Trustee
When
Miller?
the previous board approved the parking lot,
Try to turn the mic.
people raised the question.
Use the mic.
Microphone?
Many people raised the question, I did, ma'am. Guidance officer, resident.
Doing his back.
Would people walk up
Cedar Street from the parking lot. So, most people believe no. So this design was born, and what it basically does is it takes a very, very steep sloping Cedar Street between Palisade and Main on the south side. We're not touching the north side, so people who need to, ADA compliance will still be maintained on the north side. So what it does here, this is the floor plan, so the new lot would be over here, and then the crosswalk right there, and then we start right there in front of the last building on Palisade Street on the east side, and it starts a couple of steps, platforms, a couple of steps, turns, steps, platforms, levels, and then up there we maintain the driveways, and then this is just grade, driveway grade, and then a couple of steps next to the old library, and then up to Main Street. So if we look at the elevation, we start down here on Palisade Street, that last house. After you come across the crosswalk, come flat sidewalk, couple of steps, levels off, steps, and then where we have, multiple steps, we have handrails here coming up. This is the turn to Cedar Street here. Steps, driveway steps, and then this, the match line continues up here. So these are just, these houses, scoots. So this is our steps on the sidewalk, and continues up and just a gentler slope in this area here, and then steps at the top to level out to Main Street.
Not as many steps as I thought there were in my head. I don't know. I thought it was like,
I'm trying to
No,
picture
Well,
how
no,
is
I mean,
that gonna
in
be.
a good way.
Just gonna make it a much easier
Yeah.
walk, because right now, it's not only hard for people to walk, it's also dangerous. The day of the fire down there, I was down there, I saw at least 3 people fall, just walking down the street because it was wet.
The condition of the sidewalk is still needs repair anyway.
It is,
But one thing that I don't understand, Ed, you know how you're describing the crossroad that is on Palisade Street? And then you describe a few steps right on Palisade before it gets to the corner of Cedar?
yes.
I don't think that those steps are needed in there. I think that the steps are needed starting from Cedar.
That's the worst spot.
Really?
It's not really, it's the very end of Palisade Street, just by the last house.
The greenhouse that is in the
It's very-
corner.
There's like 2 steps here, then you come across to what used to be a garage door, I think is not being used as a garage anymore. And then right at the turn is the steepest spot on this whole.
Oh, so it's
path.
further up, it's not where I'm picturing it.
So Ed,
It's right at the corner, it's nowhere near the crosswalk.
you wanna look at this picture here, Ed?
Here. Yeah, maybe show that to
So
trustee.
right
Ferrell.
there.
In the
So
corner,
there's
right in the
one-
corner.
So there's 2 steps here, right in front of this door, and then it's flat, and then right here, you get a series of steps, because this is the steepest part, right here around the turn.
Yeah, that one is.
how can I show this to Liz?
So one of my concerns though is people with baby carriages and whatever, so they would have the ability to go across
They
the
would
street.
have to go on the
Yeah.
north side.
Okay.
They have to cross right in the corner where the stones are with the parking lot, and they
Right.
will cross in there and then go up on the other side. That is a ramp.
And how's that, the quality of
Yeah,
that?
what-
Is that in good shape?
It's
or-
in much better shape,
Yeah.
it's less steep
Yeah, it's less
than
steep, yeah.
the south side.
Okay.
Unless the parent is an Olympiad, they're probably not taking the baby carriage up
They're not.
the south side there, because
Oh,
of
yeah.
how steep it is.
Yeah.
People do it all the
No, I
time.
see.
Yeah, people do it all the time.
Well,
Do they? Well-
out there, I
I
saw
did it.
people intentionally walk across to the north side to take the carriages down. I'm sure not everybody does that, but.
Where do you think I got these from? I did it with 2 babies.
Is there a handrail or no?
Yes, there's going to be.
Only on the
handrails.
steps?
You see these, all of these here are handrails.
Okay. So not like the whole way?
Just basically, no, just where
So
the
there's
steps
not gonna be like a
are.
skateboarder going down the hole? No. Unless they're really good.
Handrails are just at the step areas.
Okay.
And where there's any, chance of, almost a 30-inch drop off. Which would be safe.
And how about removing the snow and the ice from those steps and the ramps? How-
So there's an open space under the handrail to push the snow under. And as everywhere else, and as it is now, the property adjacent to the sidewalk is responsible for
Shoveling.
shoveling the sidewalk clear.
Normally, they're also responsible for the sidewalks, right?
Yes,
Correct,
so if we
So-
weren't, yeah.
We're giving them sidewalks.
we are. Hopefully,
For the parking
in
lot.
an endeavor to have people better able to use
And walk
bring
from
their business
145
to
Palisade.
downtown.
Well, I gotta tell you, that hill after the snows is like a no-no. You really like, so this could help that
Oh,
particular
yeah.
element of the weather because that, I have fallen myself several times and there is not fun. It's in a slippery, very slippery spot.
Ed, would you like to talk about the bus shelter?
Sure. As part of the bid, I think our engineer, Mr. Petretti, who drew these plans and did the bid package, he did include some fat, so for any extras that might come along, he always does that, so that we don't get all of a sudden surprised with an extra $10,000 or $15,000 that we don't have budgeted. There's always money in there for incidentals. So he has enough money in there, if you were to choose, to put in a bus stop, a bus shelter. Now, it's not for the Beeline bus to come down, but there's been a lot of talk in the village about a jitney. And I think the parking lot on 99 Cedar would be a perfect stop to be on that jitney line. Because you would have people parking there trying to go up into the downtown to go to shops and restaurants or down to the train station. So it'd be a good spot. There's right in this corner here, if you've noticed the large blocks that create the wall there, there's an indent here, right in the corner. And that plexiglass and metal bus shelter would fit perfectly there. And it's not something you have to decide right away. We can wait and see and make sure that there's no overage on the project and
Right.
then use that extra money to purchase that bus shelter.
No, let's put benches around the village with that money.
We don't have that money. It's over.
I will find a different way to spend the money, you know.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
That was before our time, so we appreciate that.
Okay, so this one, the LDC is actually paying 200,000
I like your presentation.
of it. And then we'll take the balance, Jeff, from capital expense
Yeah, general fund budget.
fund. Great. Okay, so do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor Cassell, second. Trustee Nell, all in favor? Unanimous. Consider a motion to purchase a live scan fingerprint system from IDEMIA for an amount of $35,800. This is what the chief was talking about a little earlier tonight. Motion? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee Rosillo, all in favor? Unanimous. Consider a resolution concerning a memorandum of agreement to grant a non-exclusive license for the use of the dock facilities at Waterfront Park. Charlene, did you want to comment on this?
Sure. Actually, it is a very interesting agreement. What we get is, as you may know, that the docks have had some issues with the welding. It broke, basically, a portion of it. So that, we did ask for prices from various people, and the going rate was anywhere between $8,000 and $4,000. The docks, to take the docks in and out, is another $8,000. What we've done in the agreement is the Custom Marine, Dwayne Reed, will fix the welding, take the docks in and out, store them for the winter, in exchange for docking his boat, the Pelican, which is a smaller boat. I don't know the size of it, but it's a smaller boat, 24/7. And allowing him to do a number of trips or tours. I believe there's 6 a month for the Pelican, and then he has a larger ship which will not be there, larger boat which will not be there, would be stored someplace else, but he would be allowed to use that 4 times a month. So I think it's in our best interest to do that for this year.
Good. So we actually get the docks back, and it saves us some money,
Yes.
and there'll be some fun, and I think,
Yeah, and I've received the certificate of insurance. The Custom Marine has signed the agreement, and we're just awaiting approval.
Yeah.
And he will be fixing the dock on Thursday if the board so approves.
great.
So they will be operational right after?
No, that's the welding.
When will they be open and running?
Well, it's behooving to Custom Marine to do it as soon as possible, because he gets to use it.
Yeah, I think he wants it in by the
I
weekend.
need Dave to get his ducks soon.
And this is good for 1 year?
Yes.
Well,
And
no, it's
for-
just good for the 2019
For this season, it's not a
This
full
season,
calendar
I
year.
know.
But then the idea would be, we see how this works, and we can evaluate other alternatives next year.
Yes.
And maybe go out with a broader RFP, or maybe, do something similar with the same folks, depending on how it works.
How it works out.
Right, exactly.
And just want to point out, it's a license, a non-exclusive license, so it doesn't prohibit anyone else from using the docks. It just permits.
That's an important point, and the intent was that there's going to be signage to make that clear, that this is still a public facility.
Yes.
Okay. So would I have a motion? Trustee Rosillo, second trustee Taylor. All in favor? So the ferry's back in Dobbs. Consider a motion to approve a request from Ms. Kirsten Keneally to have a block party on Sherman Avenue from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. on September 14th, 2019, with a rain date of September 15th, 2019. Motion? Deputy Mayor Cassell, second. Trustee Nell, all in favor? Unanimous. Consider a motion to approve a request from Mr. Matthew Pfluger to have a block party on Price Street between Overlook Road and Hickory Hill Road from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. on September 8th, 2019, and a rain date of 9/15/2019. Motion? Deputy Mayor Cassell, second. Trustee DeRozzi, all in favor? Okay, the minutes of June 25th, 2019. Any comments? Take a motion to approve the minutes. Motion. Trustee Nell, second.
I was not at the meeting, I'm going to abstain.
Anybody? Trustee Rosillo, all in favor? Okay. Reports and announcements. Trustee DeRozzi?
Movie night tonight. I think I'm missing it already.
I think it's halfway.
But we had a great opening last Tuesday. It was so great, well attended, and kudos to the Youth Service Council and the Recreation Department for putting such a great event together. And I know that they looking into doing some other new things. So stay tuned and please keep yourself informed because they really have some great ideas coming up for the rest of the summer.
Great, thank you, trustee. Trustee Nell?
The Rivertown's Chamber of Commerce is hosting a women's networking event that's for members only on July 22nd at Harper's at 5 p.m. Look on Facebook to get your ticket. And the Downtown Improvement Task Force, we are going to be holding a work session, the Board of Trustees will be holding a work session to go over their findings and recommendations on August 6th at 6:30, and I look forward to talking about all that with y'all.
Fantastic, thank you, trustee. Trustee Sullivan?
I don't have anything.
Trustee Dillon?
The only thing I would mention is, now that it's summer, we've got the Jazz Forum Arts presenting jazz on Wednesday evenings all summer. So if you haven't been yet, you should get yourself organized with a picnic for a beautiful Wednesday evening and enjoy our waterfront park and great jazz.
Great, thank you, trustee. Trustee Rizzo?
Speaking of that, I just want to add a report. I don't know if you're going to mention it, to July 4th celebration that we had on July 4th.
Yeah, you can mention that.
So that was a fantastic
Very.
time. I don't know what the final number was, but there were thousands of people.
A lot of
who were there,
people.
Right?
Nice
A number of
fireworks.
us were there.
Petting zoo.
Petting zoo, and it was just a fascinating, great time, and hopefully it can continue. It seems to grow every year in popularity, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's a great event.
I got to see a kangaroo.
Yes, I took a picture of you.
Yes, you took a picture of me with the kangaroo.
And on that note, I do have to send a kudos to the police department because this year I understand that they try a new strategy in how to clear the streets after the event. And I was down there with the chief until pretty much like almost the last few cars were leaving the waterfront, and it was such a great strategized procedure, and the way that they clear the streets and got people out of the village was very, very noticeable. A great improvement from previous years, so congratulations to the chief and the police department for putting this whole process together because they did a really, really good job.
Yeah, I think I got home faster than ever before, so I agree.
That's great. Thank you, trustee. Deputy Mayor? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just one other thing on the budget. We did the 1% sales tax passed. So Jeff, that was great news for the village. We pick up some revenue, over $500,000 in a full year, and I think this year it's like $250,000 for the balance of the year. So that was great news for us. It helps us out.
We need
Budget.
to open new businesses downtown to get even more sales.
There we go. There we go. Also, it's supposed to be very, very hot over the next week or so, and the library has agreed to stay open as a cooling center. So if you know anybody that needs that would be helpful for them, you can let them know. Fantastic. Keep Dobbs Ferry safe, clean, and fun. Take a motion to close the meeting. Trustee Nell, second. Deputy Mayor Cassell, all in favor? Adjourned.